What's the most awkward situation you've ever been in with a stranger? Was adopted at birth. Learned who my birth family was in early 30s. Had met her sister but nobody else yet. Sister tells me grandpa is being taken off life support, cancer, and want to talk to me before he dies. Travel to hospital several hours away. Meet mom in hospital lobby for the first time ever. Go to grandpa's room where all of his and my family are. They are all there to say their goodbyes. Probably only 5% of them knew of my existence. Suddenly all the attention is on me, the stranger. They have me kneel by his side and he apologizes through tears for pressuring my mom, that I just met, to give me away for adoption. People looked pretty shocked including me. The experience was 1,000 emotions and awkward was in there somewhere. I was at a wedding reception and went to use the bathroom. I'm standing at the urinal and this guy comes up and stands next to me and lets off some whopper farts. He goes, "Oof, check out the smell of these. Q. You gotta let him out here and not by those girls. Now what am in?" And I just go, "Ha. Yep," and walk out. Felt very uncomfortable. I went for a bike ride in my neighborhood at about 12 at night a month ago. It was pitch black other than streetlights every 5 or 6 houses. I was kinda just zoning out, enjoying the fresh air, when something moved out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head to look, and I immediately assumed it was some kind of monster. I had just finished a horror movie, so I let out an extremely loud, blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night in a silent suburban neighborhood. The thing, which turned out to be a blonde soccer mom, screamed back at me, with pretty good reason. I zipped past her on my bike, yelling, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry," over and over again until I got off the street. I haven't gone on a nighttime bike ride since then. Oh man, that is so funny to me. You all poor things. LMAO. I worked the entrance gate for a theme park. Our season pass holders used a biometric scan of their right index finger to verify their identity. One day a little girl walks up with her family, who only spoke Spanish, scans her pass and places her left finger on the scanner. I say, "Can you use your right finger, sweetie?" Then her mother raises the girl's right arm to show me she doesn't actually have a right hand. Seemed to be due to a birth defect rather than a horrific accident. However, her left finger keeps getting rejected, so I call a leg over to override the old scan and redo it. He then proceeds to say the same thing to the girl, followed by her mother raising the arm again. It was definitely more awkward for me than the family, but it gets worse. About 3 months later it happened again. The same little girl. Absolutely mortifying. I hate the biometric scanners. My fingers never work. I used to do security work at parties. One night there was an alert call for a young woman gone missing. I found her with her dress hitched up looking for her underwear in the bushes. I managed to unlock her phone to call her dad, who from his name I recognized as the district attorney. He comes over to pick up his intoxicated daughter. While I was carrying her to the car, she was making very sexual remarks about me carrying her. All the while her father is hearing me out like I was responsible for his daughter ending up that way, even suggesting I had raped her. His lecture continued after I put his daughter in the backseat, still making the same remarks while pressing up her body against the car window. When the cops arrived at the scene, she was stark naked, putting her butt out the window. I told the cops my side of the story. As soon as she picked up my name, she started moaning it to the point of waking up nearby neighbors. I was brought to the police station for interrogation. Surveillance footage proved my innocence. 5 years later I see this district attorney on a weekly basis at my job. I am a pediatric nurse, but we float, substitute, to other floors when we have more nurses than we need. So I was sent to an adult floor to work as an assistant, since theirs had called in sick. An older male patient called out asking for help to get up to the bathroom. He stood, tried to pivot, and the newly operated on knee gave out. All 320 pounds of him came down on top of me and we laid there for almost an hour. I had closed the door for privacy, and neither he nor I could tell loud enough nor reach the call light for help. My phone was 10 feet from me on the floor after it fell out of my scrubs and rang incessantly. Finally the other assistant came to find me because she wanted to go on break and was tired of having to do all my work. The patient was fine. Since he fell on me, I was sore for a week. We were nose to nose the whole time and boy was it awkward. His breath was terrible, but he was a nice man and felt so bad. No, there was no boner. Discovered, whilst at the top of St. Paul's Cathedral, that I am terrified of heights. A Norwegian woman was having the same experience. We were so unnerved we ended up holding one another and bumping down the spiral staircase on our backsides. Parted ways at the bottom without a word or a backward glance. First day of my new job, I am in the lift going up 5 floors. As the doors close, a girl barges through and the door thumps her backpack. This sets off the rape alarm in the external pocket of her bag. Just an unknown guy and a girl alone in a lift with a rape alarm blaring. So awkward. Should have said something like about time. That door's been making passes at me since I walked in. Once I was at a dog groomer's to pick up my dog. It's fairly small, 20 lbs, and white. Usually when I take him, he's got long semi-curly hair, and when I pick him up he has short straight hair, which is quite a change, and this is what I expect when I go to pick him up. I walk up to the counter and request my dog, and the clerk tells me he'll be out in a moment. 30 seconds later, an attendant walks out to the lobby from the back door with a dog that immediately gets excited and tries to run away as soon as it rounds the corner to me. "Hey buddy," I say as I walk up and attempt to pick up my dog, but it turns around and starts recoiling back and gives me a nip as I try picking him up. An old man behind me asks, "Hey, is that your dog?" And me, thinking it's a pretty weird question, respond, "Yep." At that point he goes, "I don't think so, mister. That's my dog." And as I turn and realize this dog that looks just like mine after a grooming is 100% not my dog, my face goes completely red and the whole lobby starts laughing. To make it worse, the old couple whose dog it was stuck around just because they wanted to see what my dog actually looked like, and of course when he came out with a different haircut there was only a vague resemblance. Yikes. Bit late to the party with this, but while my dad was out of the country there was a major leak from the water tank in the loft which caused serious damage to the property and caused lots of other issues, including a hole in the ceiling. I called out a repair guy only to hear a huge boom, followed by a string of expletives before he called for help. I found him half in a cupboard, soaking wet, with his hand on a burst water pipe. I ended up having to help. This involved me climbing up to the loft in a short dress and stockings while he was basically laid on the floor underneath the ladder, and trying to turn off the water from there. This didn't work, so we ended up switching places so he could professionally investigate. Swapping places involved me getting soaking wet and having to press up against the guy and contort myself into position in order to minimize the risk of further damage and water explosively spraying everywhere. There was further pressing against each other and awkwardly closer contortions, as water was sprouting out like from a fountain unless we held it, before the leak was resolved. The situation was like a bad pee parody. Our dialogue even included things like, "If you come here you'll get wet and I don't mind getting wet. Let's do it." My friends now refer to this as Brockenster's plumber pee story. And then the water started spraying directly onto my chest and accidentally pushed my dress aside, exposing my eager left breast. He remarked, like they always do, about the size of my areolas. "They are huge," and before you know it, my hands were down his pants, and next thing you know, he had me bent over the counter while I felt him enter my honey pot. I serve in the Air Force, and one time I got injured at work and had to go to the hospital. Nothing serious, just dinged my finger super hard. Fricked up the ligament. My finger was shaped like an N. In a hoe. When I get to the hospital I walk in the front door. I'm still in uniform. And some nice older man comes up to me and thanks me for my service. I told him I appreciated his support, and then he abruptly asked me if I was married. I told him no, and right at that moment he turns to this woman walking by heading for the door. He turns to her and says something along the lines of, "You see this nice man? You should go on a date with him." At first I thought maybe he knew the woman. Maybe his daughter or something, but the shocked look on her face, I could easily tell he did not know her. She stopped for a moment and he asked her again, and she just went wide-eyed. Kind of stuttered for a moment and then beelined it for the door. I really didn't know what to say, so I just stood there looking like a guy who just got whacked in the head. The old man then turns back to me and says, "Let's see who else is here and available." At this point I just made some excuse about being late for my appointment and walked away. I don't know if I've ever been so red before or again in my life. Plot twist. The old man was future you who traveled back in time to be an awesome wingman for present day you. In Denver, Colorado, I met some man with a giant suitcase full of stolen clothes and a little falling apart backpack that he asked me to carry. We stopped to take a break because that suitcase he lugs around is like 100 pounds of clothes, and then he says to check out what's in my bag. I open his backpack and it's full of over-the-counter pills and a bag of M. He asked me if I wanted to try it and I just gave him his bag immediately and went away. Crap was wild. Denver 18 feet a homeless adventure. I was with my mum buying flowers at a florist for a New Year's Eve party. The florist was obviously a very lonely woman and wouldn't stop going on about how she isn't doing anything for New Year's and how it's so nice we have friends to visit. To the point where it became really saddening. My mother obviously really felt for her. Every now and again, maybe twice a year, she has a brain fart and accidentally says what she is thinking. That day was one of those rare days. After paying for the flowers, my mum said thanks. Hope you find a friend soon. I look at her in shock. The woman looks at her in shock, and my mum just gasps, apologizes and literally backs out of the store. God, it was so awkward. Posted this before. That time I screamed at a woman over poo. My little village has a small annual dog show. We normally enter our little dog who has one friendliest dog, Waggy's tail, and dog the judge would like to take home in the past. This year she was unfortunately in season, so we didn't enter to prevent any fuss from the other dogs but took her along to watch. Halfway across the park she decided to poo and I suddenly realized I'd forgotten a bag. There were loads of other people with dogs around due to the show, so I wandered away a little to ask someone for a bag. I turned back and to my horror a lady was picking up my little dog's mess. Not wanting to feel like one of those a-holes that doesn't clean up, I ran towards her to advise her she didn't have to do that because I was going to get it. Instead, in a sort of panic, I waved my arms and barked, "No, that's my poo, please note that I did not say, that is my dog's poo." She physically jumped, then turned a deep red. She sort of mumbled an apology, dropped the poo and marched off with her dog. It was at that point that I looked to my left and saw my dog's poo sitting a few feet away from the lady's dog mess that she was attempting to pick up. I think about this at night sometimes. Holy crap, this is funny. Like probably many stories on this sub, this happened at a huddle house. My GF, now wife, and I were eating with some friends and I decided I needed to go to the bathroom. Got up, walked over to it and tried the door. It was open, so I walked right on in. The room was pretty big, urinal and sink on one side, toilet on the opposite side. There was a guy in there at the urinal and he gave me a really strange look when I walked in. So I went on over to the toilet, had a pee and started actually processing my situation. That guy looked at me like I was really out of place. This toilet I'm using isn't in a separate stall. Not much privacy in here. Oh hi god, this is a single person bathroom. By this point the guy had hastily run out after finishing his business. I took care of my own affairs and had to do the walk of shame past him as I walked back to my table. I told my so later that night, completely mortified. She thought it was hilarious. The look he gave me when I walked in is still burned in my mind. If he didn't want company he should have locked the door like a normal person. When I was little, I was at a museum and saw a man that I thought was my dad. I ran up behind him and hugged his legs. Was not my dad. He flinched and kicked his leg back. I stumbled back and just sat down and cried in the middle of the floor. Then it occurred to me that I'd come to the museum with my mom. I had just pulled into a parking spot at the mall and saw my friend and his girlfriend pull in a few spaces past mine. Thinking it would be funny, I snuck up to their car and started slapping their window like a crazy person. It was not my friends in that car. I still cringe years later remembering the look of pure terror on that poor girl's face. At an art studio in LA, my girlfriend was wearing a denim jacket as we looked at a piece together. Out of the corner of my eye I saw the jacket and I reach over to grab her butt. A sudden "oh" comes from beside me and a woman 30 years older than me is standing there blushing. I tell her I thought she was someone else and run away to my girlfriend. A few minutes later the lady comes and finds us to talk about young love and how cute we are while making too much eye contact with me. My son had small Toy Story figurines but wanted big ones for Christmas. I walked into Toy R Us and asked the male clerk, "Do you have a large Woody?" He turned bright red. I wheeled around and marched out and didn't go back for months. Golly, I was thinking about how terrible that name is for a children's toy. When I was young, I thought some random lady was my mum and tugged her skirt. She turned, screamed, and I screamed back. Not my proudest moment. In the cinema, I interlocked my fingers with the kid sitting beside me for a full minute. Turns out, he wasn't my kid. That happened to me as a kid in the mall. Got lost inside a store and randomly reached out to a mother's hand, only to find out a couple minutes later it wasn't my mom. Lol. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would spend the weekend staying up late playing video games and eating junk food. I was also a cross-country runner, and on this particular night I was experiencing some extreme chafing from a long run earlier that day. While we were at the gas station getting Doritos and energy drinks, I announced to who I thought was my friend, "Man, my nipples really hurt." Upon realizing it was a complete stranger with whom I had just shared this intimate detail, I simply stared at him and said, "You're not my friend," and walked away. I didn't go back to that gas station for a long time. You're not my friend. Guy hangs head in sorrow. My wife and I went out for a drink one night. We walk into the bar. I see someone I know at the bar with their back turned. Walk up behind them and tickled their sides. Turned it, I didn't know this person. They just have me a weird look and walked away. Got their spot at the bar though. Wife and I went to Europe for our honeymoon. We were in a train station in Amsterdam and I had to use the bathroom. I walked into the toilet stall and saw there was TP in the bowl but didn't think anything of it. I did my business and when I tried to flush, it didn't go down. In a panic I flushed again and this only resulted in the water becoming dangerously close to the rim of the bowl. I said frick it and started to leave. However, right outside the stall was a bathroom attendant. He looked over at me and started yelling at me asking why was I clogging up the toilet. He was blocking me from leaving and all these other people in the bathroom looked in at us. God, it was so embarrassing I wanted to die. I eventually muttered sorry and brushed past him and ran out of the bathroom. Two of us in an elevator for 20 floors. He farted when he got in and we just stared silently at each other the whole ride up. You got power moved. Disney's Tower of Terror. 12-year-old me spent the entire lineup desperately trying to catch the attention of a cute guy who was there with his dad. Ended up sitting in the same car as him on the ride. As the ride starts, I grabbed my mom's hand for support. Near the end I realized that my mom was on the other side of me and I'd been holding hands with the cute guy's dad the entire time. They were all laughing at me. I was standing behind this guy waiting for the elevator in a hotel one time. We were down in the lobby and it was busy with lots of people coming and going. So he obviously hadn't noticed me. Elevator doors open. He gets in and turns to press the button for his floor. So he didn't see me walk past him on the other side. As soon as the doors close, obviously still under the impression that he was alone, he lets rip the most heinous fart that went on for all of about 10 seconds. Mid-fart, out of the corner of his eye, he spots me standing just behind him. Poor guy almost jumped out of his skin. He's staring at me like he's seen a ghost. I'm staring at him with what I can only assume was a fairly horrified expression, trying to think of something to say to make this whole situation less awkward. As luck would have it, we're both going to the same floor and he's staying in the room right across the corridor from me. So we have to endure an extra 30 seconds or so of mortified silence as we walk down the hall together. I thought about slipping a jokey note under his door. Shoulder stayed away from the shrimp tacos at the buffet, but decided against it. I just had this ridiculous image of you trying to convince him that you're the product of his epic fart. It was intensely awkward when I gave a hitchhiker a ride and he started talking graphically about his sexual interests and proclivities. I only gave him a ride because it was pouring rain and he looked like a college student from our university. When he started getting more and more personal, I couldn't wait for him to get out of the car at his destination, something he didn't want to do once we arrived. I had a Comcast installation guy who did something similar. I probably should have asked him to leave, as an early 20-something female alone at home with him, but I really wanted internet. He left his personal number for me on the counter. I did not call. At the airport, I walk up as the elevator door is closing and there is a woman inside with a stroller. I slowed down because I wasn't in a hurry and would rather catch the next one. Then I saw a little girl about 2 or 3 years playing in a flower pot thing nearby. I realized she was likely meant to be on the elevator with her mom, but the doors are closed by the time I put it together. I walk up to her and said, "Did your mommy get in the elevator?" She just shyly smiles. I sit down with her and decide to wait in place for a few minutes for the mom to realize. A minute or two later, a man walks up and says, "Excuse me, can I have child?" in a thick Russian Y accent. I was trying to decide what to ask to figure out if she was his kid, when the elevator door reopened and the woman came flying out yelling for the girl. She hops up happily and runs over to the mom. I stared at guy with an accusing look. Then he turned and got in the elevator too. IDK, what the heck was going on there? Was he with them? Did he think I was trying to take their kid? Was he a creeper following them? So awkward. I literally sat silent through the whole weird encounter. Maybe you looked creepy and he pretended he was the father. Once on my way home from work, I picked up a hitchhiker on the highway. Told him I can get him 20 miles south of he wants. About 5 minutes into the trip he starts talking about blood and killing people. Pulled over immediately. Told him he needs to get the frick out of my car. Started mumbling something about my white tennis shoes. That's nice. Get the frick out now. He got out and I continued on my merry way. Was at a bar with some friends watching a basketball game, and this guy kept asking me to check out his girlfriend every time she went away. For example, she got up to go outside to smoke. He stayed in, and he was like, "Be honest, is that not the best butt you've ever seen?" He did this several times. I felt so uncomfortable. And there's no nice way of putting it, she wasn't attractive whatsoever to me. I'm glad that guy is happy with her, though. He was definitely trying to get you to frick her. Got on an elevator with a woman and she had on these really nice boots, so I complimented them by saying "nice boots." She cups her breasts and says, "Well, you're not shy. Thank you, they're real," and then immediately realized I said booties. She thought I said nice boobs. Longest elevator ride ever. To this day, whenever I say boots in any context, I do so with a very hard deliberate T. Her reaction was awesome. I've had this same thing happen to me with one of my employees. Luckily she deciphered what I actually said before it got too weird, and yeah, a very hard T from now on for me. It was my first time voting in a presidential election in 2016 since becoming old enough to do so, and polling place was at a library. When I get to the front of the line and start filling out the required papers, I mention it's my first time and what to do next. After hearing this, the woman who was working there and helping me raised her voice and said, "Hey everyone, we've got a first time voter here," and started clapping so they all would clap as well. Nobody clapped, and I was just standing there really embarrassed before quietly saying, "Can I just go vote now?" If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.